Finally. Sorry, everybody. Still waiting on 4 or 5 people to pop in, guys, and then we'll get started. Wow, I just cannot get them in, and it is like 8:48. I'm going to start talking through the agenda, and if I can even get it to do that, here we go. Okay, so we do have an illusion, grammar lesson 9 due tonight, and then we have the AP Classroom Unit 1 thing. You're supposed to do those notes on the character video last night. Looks like just about everybody did that. Somebody did post a thesis idea on the everyday use on the Jamboard. We'll look at that real fast. Tobias Wolf's Hunter in the Snow, that's due tonight if you haven't read that yet, with however many questions I assigned on that. And there's something I need to catch up with on a chapter that I should have exposed you to before, but it'll still be useful. So maybe do some of that in class. Let me go ahead and pop over to this illusion. Hit admit all one more time over here before I start. Sorry to Connor, Emma, Jordan, Mackenzie, and whoever Mr. and Mrs. iPhone is. I can't get them in. I don't know why, but I'm recording this, so they can always watch if they can't get in. All right, so the muses, or sometimes just referred to as the muse. Speak up if you know anything about the muse or the muses, and grab a piece of paper, right, wherever you're keeping these notes. Okay, we'll eventually have a test on this. Anybody? No. Someone might say the muse was speaking to me or the muse was not speaking to me. I'm not on the grid right now, so I can't see you raise your hand, so just speak up if you know anything. Nobody, huh? Nobody knows that? Okay. Well, here you go. In Greek mythology, the Muses were the 9 goddesses, sometimes just referred to as the Muse, who presided over the arts. They gave inspiration to mortals. So typically an epic, such as the Odyssey or the Iliad, begins with an invocation. An invocation is like a prayer. An invocation to the muse, in which the poet asks the muses or the muse to inspire him as he writes or sings his story. So the narrator of the Odyssey, before he goes into Odysseus' story, asks for inspiration from the muse. So today, a muse is someone's source of inspiration, especially in artistic, creative endeavors. So it's used as just kind of a figure of speech. The muse was not speaking to me today. I could not paint, or I could not write, or I could not write this, create a song. Inspiration, that's the key word. And remember, you don't have to get down every word, but the basics. Okay, a couple examples. It's common for fashion designers to select a particular woman as a muse, keeping her in mind as he or she designs a new line of clothing. Or I really felt I needed to work on the songs I'm writing this weekend, but it seemed the muse had abandoned me. I couldn't seem to make any progress at all. Get the idea. Okay, if you're an extremely anal retentive note taker, I need you to look back at this. You can look at the recording. I need to move on here. Try one more time to get these 5 people in. Wow, ridiculous. It's like it's totally jammed up. Skip out of that. Okay, so watch the video. So this Jamboard here, we had 1 person, a grand total of 1 person. Oh, there's 2 now. Wow, cool. All right, I have not seen the second one yet. Please tell me who you are if you're in this class and you did one of these. First one, and this is the one I've read, and the person did a very good job. In Alice Walker's everyday use, okay, so we got the author's name, title of the story, in quotation marks, which is correct since it's a short story. Walker uses anecdotes, flashbacks, as well as dialogue between characters to effectively create a complex relationship between the narrator and D, okay? Very good effort there. Like I said, the author's name is used, the story title's name is used. There are 3 techniques or devices listed, and it does answer the prompt in saying that it does create a complex relationship between the narrator and D. However, and this is, I wouldn't expect you to know this, but the one big way to improve this is, the prompt already says that there's a complex relationship, right? So what can we add to this to make it really answer the prompt instead of what's happening here, which is, oh, I can't highlight that, sorry, which is basically restating the prompt, right? What can we do? We need some kind of descriptor. If you really, really want to have an awesome thesis, you can add descriptors to the devices, okay? So maybe not just dialogue, but telling dialogue or insightful dialogue or disturbing dialogue or ambiguous dialogue, as well as adding descriptors to these. I would also say anecdotes and flashbacks are actually a little bit redundant. You're kind of going to talk about the anecdotes are the flashbacks, right? So it's kind of the same thing, okay? Those are the things we'd want to add to that to make it even better. But for a first effort, you've got the skeleton of it, right? Another one here. Walker illustrates the complex relationship between the narrator D through flashbacks, a detailed descriptive voice, and candid dialogue. All right, now look at this here. Detailed and descriptive voice, candid dialogue. So not just voice and not just dialogue, but there's descriptors on there. But still, it illustrates a complex relationship. How would we describe the actual complex relationship between the speaker or the narrator, the mother, and D? Who can tell us that? What would you call it? How is the relationship? What descriptors can we add to complex relationship to really answer the prompt? What is all this going to add up to? What kind of complex relationship? Let's start with negative or positive. I want you guys to talk today. Is it a negative relationship or a positive relationship? Can we call it one way or the other? That's not always the case, but where would you lean? Is it a thumbs up one or a thumbs down relationship? It's kind of thumbs down, isn't it? It's okay, so how? What's making you think that? You know, come up with some adjectives, not of the characters, but of their relationship. What would we call their relationship? We know it's complex, but let's add a descriptor to complex. And that's the kind of thing that you need to get into a thesis, and then we'll move on. Somebody give me something with your voice. We're all going to talk here soon, so you might as well get it over with. Why are you guys so shy today? My God. I'm tap dancing over here. Can't come up with a descriptor of how it's complex? How about something along the lines of difficult, right? It's a difficult and complex relationship, right? Something like that is where we want to head. Okay, so that's kind of our first taste of writing a thesis, which will lead into eventually writing full paragraph and of course full essays. But in the meantime, the other thing that we need to do, okay, don't forget about Tobias Wolff. You should be reading that tonight, okay? Can you guys get your Brian anthologies out? You should have that with you, right? Have it handy. Everybody get this book out. We're gonna read together because I forgot about the characterization chapter. It's only like 5 or 6 pages long. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce spirit reading, which I think will actually work pretty well in a live stream session. And the way that you do that is one person starts reading, and then sometime when that person hits a period or at least a comma or something like that, someone else in the room who feels the spirit can decide to run over the top of them and start reading. At that point, the person who was reading stops and lets the person who started reading go for a few sentences, and then someone else will interrupt that person too. And every time someone reads, of course, we'll see who it is. And well, actually, we don't have to screen share anyway because this is a book, and I will be giving you participation for doing so, okay? So I love doing this, and it is something we would do in class sometimes, is kind of read and talk through one of these chapters. And this one has some very straightforward kind of terminology that we want to think about in relation to everyday use and the Tobias Wolff story that you're doing tonight. Even though we're going to focus on setting for that, but we can focus on characterization and setting for both. Okay, so I'm going to start, and then at some point when I pause at a period, some other person, without raising their hand or anything, is going to unmute him or herself and start reading instead. And then occasionally we'll stop and talk. And we don't have nearly as much time as I wanted to. But I didn't want to pile more homework on you because you're doing another short story tonight. So I thought it would be nice to just kind of do this in class. Okay, sorry, it is on page 161. 161, characterization. I forgot I'm not screen sharing. I have a paper book in my hands. 161. And I'm going to start. The preceding chapter considered plot apart from characterization as if the two were separable. Actually, along with the other elements of fiction discussed in later chapters, plot and characterization work together in any good story. In commercial fiction, plot is usually more important than in-depth characterization, while literary writers are usually more concerned with complex characters than with the mechanics of plot, right? Like in everyday use, not a whole lot happens, right? but there's a whole lot of stuff going on between the lines, right? Many literary fiction writers, in fact, consider characterization to be the most important element of their art. So you definitely want to be able to write about characterization, and especially since that's another one of the broad things you can write about in an essay in the open the essay. Okay, since it's more of a broad sweeping thing than a language device. Analyzing characterization is more difficult than describing plot, for human character is infinitely complex, variable, and ambiguous. Anyone can summarize what a person in a story has done, but a writer needs considerable skill and insight into human beings to describe convincingly who a person is. Even the most complicated plot in a detective story puts far less strain on our understanding than does human nature.
This is why commercial fiction may, fe- may feature an elaborate plot but offer characters who are simple and two dimensional, even stereotypical. In such fiction, the characters must be easily identifiable and clearly labeled as good or bad. The commercial author's aim is to create characters who can carry the plot forward, not to explore human psychology, psychology and motivation.
Okay, so question, are the characters in everyday use, are they easily labeled as good or bad? Definitely not, right? There's a lot of gray there. Okay, go ahead.
The main character in a commercial work must also be someone attractive or sympathetic. If the protagonist is male, he need not be perfect, but usually he must be fundamentally decent, honest, good-hearted, and preferably good-looking. He may also have larger than life qualities, showing himself to be daring, dashing, or gallant.
Mhm.
He may he may defy laws made for ordinary people, but this makes him even more likable because he breaks the rules for a good reason, to catch a
To catch a
criminal.
criminal or to prevent a disaster. In commercial fiction, the reader enjoys identifying with such a protagonist, vicariously sharing his adventures, escapes, and triumphs. If a protagonist has vices, they might be the kind of typical reader who would not mind or enjoy having. For instance, the main character in successful commercial fiction may be sexually promiscuous. James Bond is a good example, and thus allow readers to indulge imaginatively in pleasures they might not allow themselves in real life. Oh, naughty, naughty.
Literary fiction does not necessarily renounce the attractive character. Jane Eyre, Huckleberry Finn, and Holden Caulfield are literary characters beloved by millions of readers. Both Mr. Darcy and interpreter of Miladies and Eddie and How I Met My Husband are likable characters as well. But literary protagonists are less easily labeled and pigeonholed than their counterparts in commercial fiction. Sometimes they may be wholly unsympathetic, even despicable, but because human nature is not often entirely bad or perfectly good, literary fiction deals usually with characters who are composed of both good and evil impulses, three dimensional human beings who live in our memory as real people long after we have stopped reading. Such fiction offers an exciting opportunity to observe human nature in all its complexity and multiplicity. It enables us to know people, to understand them, and to develop compassions for them in a way we might not do without reading serious fiction. In some respects, we can we can know fictional characters even better than we know real people in our lives. For one thing, we observe fictional people in situations that are always significant and that serve to illuminate the characters in a way that our daily routine exposure to real people seldom does. We can also view a character's inner life in a way that's impossible in ordinary life. Authors can show us, if they wish, exactly what is happening in a character's mind and emotions. In real life, of course, we can only guess at another person's thoughts and feelings from external behavior, which may be designed to conceal the person's inner life. Because of the opportunity literary fiction affords us of knowing its characters so thoroughly, it also enables us to understand the motives and behavior of people in real life. Authors present their characters either directly or indirectly. In direct presentation, they tell us straight out, exposition or analysis, what the characters are like, or they have another character in the story describe them. In indirect presentation, the author shows us the characters through their actions. We determine what they are like by what they do. Graham Greene uses direct presentation when he tells us about Blackie. He was just He had no jealousy.
Somebody going to save Chris here at some point?
He uses indirect presentation when he, oh, I read that line already. No, I didn't. He uses indirect presentation when he shows Blackie allowing the gang to vote on Trevor's project, accepting the end of his leadership fairly calmly, taking orders from Trevor without resentment, burning blank notes with Trevor, pricing him out.
In this story, of course, the word just has a slight ironic twist. It applies only to behavior within the gang, and Green presents this indirectly. Alice Marino relies on indirect presentation to show that Chris Waters is a charming but irresponsible presentation to show that Chris Waters is a charming but irresponsible barnstormer.
Barnstormer, yep.
Eddie never directly criticizes him, but we feel her disillusionment as she waits day after day for a letter that will never come. Sometimes the method of direct presentation has the advantages of being clear and economical, but good writers use it sparingly. In order to involve the reader in a character, the author must show the character in action. The axiom?
Sorry, I was axiom. Yep.
Show don't tell is therefore one of the basics of fiction writing. If characters are merely described, then the story will read more like an essay. The direct method usually has little emotion impact unless it is bolstered by the indirect. It will give us only the explanation of a character, not the impression of a living, breathing human being. In almost all good fiction, therefore, the characters are dramatized.
Okay, going to cut you off right there. Thanks for attempting that for the first time, guys. I'd like to see a little bit more bouncing around, but we'll do that once in a while. I'm not going to ask you to write anything, but can you just, before you put this book away right now and as we leave, just go ahead and read those last couple pages just so we can include those in the terminology and the conversation a little bit when we talk about Hunters in the Snow tomorrow. Don't worry about the review questions, okay? Just finish reading the chapter. I trust that you can do that. I got to go because I got to start third bell. I'm afraid it's going to be a jam again, so sorry those that didn't get in. Hopefully I can watch the recording, and goodbye.